Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Elevate Your Eight podcast. I am your host, Chris McPeak, and today's interview is a long time coming. We've been trying to get together for a while now. Um, if you participated in the Coping with COVID Summit, you heard her then. This is Susmitha from the Feel Good Factor podcast, and she is talking to us all the way from India. Susmitha, good evening, and how are you doing?
Hey, Chris. Great to be here. I'm glad we finally figured this out. And, I love that we're doing this back to back. So, to everyone who's listening, I'm going to have Chris on my podcast next. We're
Perfect.
doing both the interviews together. It's perfect planning.
I
And
know
thank you.
everybody should
Oh,
interview like that.
yeah, it makes sense. And thank you so much for waking up so early in the morning. I'm not a morning person, so 4 a.m. is like amazing for me that you woke up so early so we could work together.
Yeah, we get up this early all the time. So it,
Hmm.
it was not a problem for me at all. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your show. I want to let the Elevate
Hmm.
Your Eight people know, what is the Feel Good Factor? What do you focus on? Why should my listeners turn into your podcast?
So the feel good factor is, as the name suggests, all about feeling good. I help, I do talks, I do interviews, and I do meditations, and all of them are focused one way or another to help you make happiness your highest priority
I love
in every aspect of your life, whether it's relationships, whether it is your own personal life, whether it is with business, whether it's working with others, collaborating, wherever it is. So there are episodes which cover advice for entrepreneurs, conscious entrepreneurs. There are episodes which are just about self-care and healing and wellness. It's a wide range of things, but all boils down to happiness.
Well, we all need a lot more happiness in our lives these days. So I'm so glad that you're
Mhm.
out there putting this into the world. So my philosophy on time management and productivity is just all prioritization and mathematics. So it's important to me that people honor their work-life balance. They work just 8 hours a day, honor their wellness, sleep 8 hours every night, and then the other 8 hours is basically the main thing that you have to manage with productivity. So what I'm curious about is, how do you prioritize happiness?
You don't put it in any 8-hour cycles. You don't put it, you put it in
Right.
everything. You're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Put it in everything that you do as much as possible. Or rather, you don't put the happiness, you follow the happiness. You follow
Ooh.
what brings you joy through every aspect of your life. That is how you prioritize it. And say, for example, you do a job that you really love
Mhm.
and you feel you can put a lot of time into it and a lot of effort into it, but you also have to make sure that you're happy doing it always, because right, in the beginning it's all about passion, like, yes, I'm going to do this and I'm going to push myself beyond that 8 hours of work, about what you're talking about,
Sure.
losing sleep from those 8 hours because you believe in this work that
Mhm.
you're doing. It could be a business, a job, it could be anything, but then that takes away from your happiness, so you have to be very conscious about that. So putting yourself and your mental health, your peace of mind, your joyfulness, creativity, putting it first in whatever you do, that is a good compass to follow, because then what happens is, around you you'll start developing other good habits, like,
Mhm.
for example, creating very good boundaries.
Yeah.
That is so important, and you will only do that if you prioritize your happiness.
Mhm. I love that. Okay, so for somebody that's in a job that maybe they like the work itself, but they don't like the organization they work for, or they
Hmm.
love the organization, but they're not crazy about the work itself. So how
Hmm.
would somebody come to terms with that so that they don't necessarily have to make a big upheaval in their life, but that they can put more happiness into that day job?
So I would say that if you like the organization where you're working but you're not very happy with the work itself,
Uh-huh.
then trying to find ways to work in the organization but doing something a little different, or including smaller things. So if say somebody is in a corporate job and they're working with IT, computers, something like that, but they also are interested in helping people, so maybe they could involve themselves, put like an hour of their job into CSR activities, into
Mhm.
team building activities. So see what they are good at, what brings them joy, and then incorporate that into your work as much as possible. Now, if you like the work but don't like the organization, that's a little bit different, because then it is important to do either one of two things. One is you change your organization, because
Yeah,
it's important to work in a happy environment where you're valued and you believe in what the organization is doing.
right.
But that is an upheaval, as you said, and there is not necessarily a guarantee that the next place you go
Right.
to is going to make it. So what you do is, again, what is in your control in the environment that you're at, you, and then your direct team, not the organization as a whole, but just your team, people who your colleagues, or people who are working under you. What can you control, and what can you change there to make the whole culture and the whole environment better for everyone all together? How can you do that? That will help make, if not change the whole organization, at least the universe around you, immediate organization around you, you help to bring more joy into that.
I love that. And it's highly reflective of something that my husband tells me all the time. He'll say, like, the only control you have is self-control. So
Hmm.
if you don't like an environment that you're in, make it more palatable for yourself. And then that will brighten your mindset. And I have something taped on my work computer that says something about
Hmm.
the you can't when you can't control what happens, you can control the way that you respond to it. And that's where your power is. And I love that, because we always have a choice, even when something that's unpleasant sort of hits us in the face. And maybe we can't change that thing happened, but we can definitely change the way we respond to it. And, like Mary Poppins would say, take a spoonful of sugar and the medicine goes down, all that kind of stuff. Um, Okay, now you have a plant-based restaurant in the city where you live in India, and
Hmm.
that's your day job, and then this show is sort of your side hustle. So I would love to know how the restaurant came into being, and then
Sure.
what led you down the podcasting road to add this piece of joy to the world.
So the restaurant came into, I've been vegan for many years now. I got into it in 2003, so that's about 17 years
Yeah,
now, really long time ago. And it was not very well known back then, especially in India. At least in the US, to some extent things were but in India not so much. So I had to, initially when I decided to go vegan, it was purely for ethical reasons. I just didn't want to use animals for my own benefit. In whatever way, best way possible, I could at least contribute to this. But after going vegan, I realized that there weren't too many alternatives and things available in the market yet back then, so I had to fend for myself. So
yeah.
I had to make my own dairy alternatives. I had to make my own cakes and cookies and things like that. But when I started, so initially I thought it was all about giving up stuff and I just won't get to have all these yummy things anymore.
Right.
But when I started, that's a very common myth. And especially back then, it was like very, very commonly thought that way. But when I started exploring, I was like, oh my God, my mind was blown with the kind of varieties. I was having more varieties of things, more varieties of cuisines, dishes, ingredients that I was using, a lot more after going vegan than in my pre-vegan days, because
Yeah.
instead of one kind of dairy which comes from cow, or maybe two or three in India, it's like buffalo and stuff like that too. So instead of that couple of those, I have 10, 20, 30 kinds of milks that
Yeah.
I can make. I can make curds with that. I can make, and these are delicious things which I when I started making them, of course I was feeding it to my friends, my family, people around. I'm like, hey, look, I made this, what do you think? And initially when they didn't know, they didn't hadn't connected me. Now everyone who knows me connects me to being vegan. I mean,
Sure.
my I
It's your
don't even use
identity.
my
It's a part
last.
of your identity.
It's my identity. I don't even use my last name. I call myself Susmita Veganosaurus. That's
I
how
know.
I'm more commonly known.
I love that.
So, but back then, when people weren't actually associating me with veganism, if I gave them a cake, they wouldn't know that it was a vegan cake that I had baked. They would eat it and they're like, "Oh, yummy! Where did you get this from?" And they, talk about some bakery, local bakery, which is famous for cakes. And I'm like, "No, I made it.
I made
And guess what?
it.
It's vegan, no eggs, no dairy." And I saw that not only does vegan food have a huge variety, delicious stuff, it's a cuisine on its own,
Sure.
but also it's not just for vegans, it's for everybody to love and enjoy. Most people can really, really like it. And it's also fairly healthy in comparison to
Yeah.
a lot of the non-vegan stuff out there, right? So that's what triggered my passion for cooking, for baking, for creating recipes. That turned me into a chef. And I started with the food blog where I would experiment, make recipes, and then share them online, because it would help people see that, oh, you can do, with a few simple locally available ingredients, you don't need anything fancy, you can actually create something fancy out of them. And then the restaurant was a culmination of that. And Carrots, so that's what my restaurant is called, was India's first vegan restaurant.
That
And it was
blows my
start
mind. It's so amazing because I mean, it's not like India is a tiny place. It's a big, well-populated
it's
country.
almost most populated country. It's of course, it's huge. And vegetarianism is very common in India. That's like a part of the culture. It's taken for
Mhm.
granted. Even the people who eat meat, most of their meals tend to be vegetarian.
Right.
But veganism was very, very new back then. And dairy is something people love. It's associated with religion, it's associated with culture. There's a lot
Yeah.
of emotional attachment to dairy. So, which is why I think nobody had really had the maybe, it was a scary thought to start a vegan restaurant back
Mhm.
then. And believe me when I say, we were way ahead of the curve when we started. The first 3 years were a struggle. I'd say that we had to create awareness about vegan food, and that is not just grass and leaves,
Right.
among
Right.
people, before the market developed. I didn't start the restaurant. A guy called Krishna did. And I would go there as a guest all the time. And I
Mhm.
would be like the most vocal, supportive, like, yeah, vegan restaurant in my city. And then, tell everybody about it and go teach them recipes. And it was a natural progression for me to become a part of the restaurant. First joined as a team member, then became a partner, took it over. And yeah, we celebrated our 7th anniversary just before COVID hit.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. So COVID. Oh my God. And we talked earlier on the summit about what your restaurant was doing in the
Mhm.
in the midst of that, right? So are you back to at least being able to have people indoors in a limited capacity, or are you doing outdoor dining or a lot of carry out?
We are only doing takeaway and deliveries because, yes, the government has allowed restaurants to open up for dine in a limited capacity, but we don't want to risk it. We don't really want to risk our own team members, as
Sure.
well as, why just to open for dine in and then somebody will come and then through them. We don't want to be the point of contact also for the disease to spread in any way.
Yeah.
So we are playing it safe. It's not easy to just work with takeaway and delivery after having been a dine-in restaurant, especially after having been a place where people would come not just for the food but also to enjoy the atmosphere of the place. they
Yeah.
they liked the feeling of being there. But we're managing, and we're somehow getting through, and we're hoping if things get a little better, maybe in January we could open for dine-in again in a limited capacity.
Love it. What's your very favorite thing to make or create, or what's your favorite dish? Your favorite vegan dish?
Hmm, there are too many. Now, so so here's the thing. South Indian food. I'm from the southern part of India, and
Mhm.
a lot of the South Indian food is the vegetarian food, especially. It
Okay.
it tends to be vegan by default. So
Yeah.
my traditional comfort foods like idli, dosa, these are things that I, which are things I've grown up eating.
Mm,
They are vegan by default. So I
awesome.
would say that no matter what I do, no matter what fusion dishes I make from different parts of the world, no matter what I bake, ultimately the stuff that I enjoy making and eating would be my traditional, comfort giving South Indian foods. And yes, I make vegan yogurt and I have it with with
Wow.
peanuts.
Yeah. So, okay, tell me about vegan yogurt because that is a milk-based product. Um, yeah, how do you do that? I'm very
um,
curious.
e- Pretty much anything that is the dairy based can be made from a plant based version. So
Mhm.
here's the thing with vegan milk. That's why I was saying we have so many varieties, because
Yeah.
any nut, any seed, almost any grain, and a few beans. So that's
Wow.
huge. All of them can form some kind of milk or another. You can extract milk out of them. It
Wow.
just has to be.
Never thought about getting milk out of a bean. Like that's fascinating to me.
Soy milk is from a bean, right? Like that way when I say bean.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, that's true. That's fair.
Yeah. And it just has to be creamy if it has to be yogurt. If it
Mhm.
has to be turned into yogurt, some of them are like milks, like say if you do oat milk or if you do milk with rice or almond rice. I love rice milk and almond milk and things like that. But if you want to make yogurt, you want it to be a little bit heavier on the protein and fat content. So two of the best things that work in yogurt are soy as well as peanuts. So
Okay.
peanut yogurt is very common here. So that is, it's kind of big because it sets, a little bit goes a long way. You just use like a handful. Say you use a cup of peanuts, you use 6 cups of water to make the
Okay.
yogurt. So a little goes a long way. And you once you cook it up, it gets creamy and thick. And yes, of course, yogurt is made by introducing cultures, probiotic cultures into the
Right.
milk, and that's what makes it. And again, in India, there is one advantage we've had, that we've never, while growing up, now it's a little different in the market, but while growing up, we used to make our own yogurt at home. That's like a part of our food. Like you just make yogurt at home. That's like a standard habit. So because of that, it was easy for me to start making vegan version of yogurt. And I teach dairy alternatives classes. I teach a lot of vegan cooking and baking classes because I believe empowering people to make their own food
Yeah.
is the only, it's the best way to go forward, right? That's the
Mhm.
way someone would consider it, because you don't want to have to be dependent on a food business to go and buy your foods, your products, your day-to-day especially products. So I teach. My dairy alternatives class is the most popular. People from all across the globe, they like to take it, even non-vegans, because it's a very interesting thing, right, to be able to make yogurt and milk out of nuts and seeds and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check that out. I've never made my own milk before. I tried to
Hmm.
make my own cheese, um,
Hmm.
or cheese sauce, I guess would be a better way of saying that.
Cheese
Um,
spread kind of a thing, yeah.
yeah. So connecting to your show again, the feel good factor. I know some people just derive an intense amount of pleasure, excitement, happiness through the making of food and sharing it with
Hmm.
other people. So
Hmm.
is that part of what sort of drove you to start your show, or like what was the impetus for starting your podcast?
Funnily, it has nothing to do with my cooking or veganism, though
Uh-huh.
I mention it as a part of the show because that's just my identity of who I am. So it comes in as a part of my life. But my show is not at all focused on food or cooking or anything like that. The show came because I got into my day job, which was before my day job. I never had a day job. I would always freelance, and I've always worked for myself. I've never worked for
Oh
somebody
wow.
else or worked in an organization. uh, Fortunately, I had the luxury to be able to do that. But with the restaurant was the first real job where I would actually go into work every day, not just work from home. I used to go and spend all my day there. And in the hospitality industry, it takes a lot out of you, right?
Yeah.
And I learned a lot on the job about how you can trick yourself into believing there are certain things that give you so much happiness. They give you fulfillment, but also you lose a lot of yourself into it.
Sure.
And I that is what got me thinking. I'm like, we are not making our happiness the highest priority always, all the time. And it's good to be of service, it's good to make others happy, it's good to do beautiful work in the world, but it's most important that you are actually fulfilled and happy, and your cup is full before you serve to others.
That's right.
And that is where the idea of the podcast came about. And I got into podcasting because of our common friend Ali.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
She's my inspiration. I had listened to a few podcasts before, but when I started listening to Food Heals, it was very inspiring. And I'm like, the way this the way she makes me feel when she speaks, she as well as her guests, of course. I listened to you also for the first time on her show, and
Oh,
found your podcast through. So the way that environment made me feel, I wanted to make others feel that way too. I wanted to inspire, motivate, so that is how the podcast came into being.
so it's so perfect. Yeah. I mean, your personality and spirit is just so uplifting, and it's, to be around you, even like on the other side of the world, is there's just light and glow there.
Aww.
Um, when you think about productivity and time management, work life balance, those kinds of things, I know we talked earlier
Mhm.
about just making sure that happiness is first. But do you find that when you do that, that the other things fall into place, like waking up in the morning and saying, I'm going to put my happiness first, but here's this big old to-do list that I have to get done. So
Mhm.
does it sort of, like, how does that work? How do we wake up, tell ourselves that our priority is our happiness, but we still have to contribute to society and do all these other.
Now, I agree with you, because it's not always there is so much that you need to do. But when I say make happiness your priority, for example, with you, Chris, you are passionate about making those to-do lists. You're passionate about productivity. Like I would say, in fact, that when you say 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work, and the remaining 8 hours for the other stuff,
Right.
I think if you sit around for those 8 hours of work without doing anything, you will go crazy, right? You can't do that.
Right.
You would be incapable of. So that is, your happiness comes from your planning and ticking things off and saying, okay, I got this done, this done, this done, and you feel joy from that,
Mhm.
a sense of fulfillment and achievement. So
Absolutely.
that so it depends on each person's personality. For me, I never like to have too many things on my plate at the same time.
Mhm.
I don't work well that way. I like to take one. I mean, though I do many things. It's not just the podcast, it's not just the restaurant. I do a number of different things. I have a number of interests, but I don't like to do all of it on the same day. So if
Right.
I say I'm working on a certain thing, I will schedule it in such a way that there's a lot of gap in between for me to take breathers. So say productivity, you have a long list of things to do today. I'll make sure that, okay, I have this, then I will treat myself to this much of a, you know a rest time, or Netflixing, or playing a game, whatever. Like
Right.
just like let myself slack off in the middle, and then do again this, and then again let myself. So so for me, even when I have to do things, and if I have to push myself on a certain day when I don't really can't really do too much,
Right.
I try to make sure I get plenty of breaks in between. So it's not like get it all out of the way and then take a break and relax. For me, instead, it works the other way. Keep taking breaks. And it also helps to remember, when we talk about to-do lists, it also helps to remember that nothing has to be done today. We are not brain surgeons. Nobody is dying, right? So it's okay to just put things off also. It's okay to just rest. Like today, I don't want to do anything. I want to slack off. I feel my body is asking for it. My mind is asking for it.
Yeah.
It's okay. Treat yourself to that. That is the balance. For me, work-life balance is balancing it in that way.
Love that. Yeah, and my supervisor is very very clear with her team on reminding
Mhm.
us that like nobody's gonna die if you don't get this project done today. And I
Yeah.
appreciate that because I came from the world of college housing before my
Mhm.
current job, and everything was often put forward in an emergent sort of like, if this situation isn't mitigated, bad things will happen. And it was hard to work in a system that constantly made you feel like if you're not solving the problem, then you're not doing anything. And sometimes
Hmm.
it's not a problem to solve. It's okay to sit in things going well. It's okay to sit in things making you smile, that not everything has to be an emergency. So I love the idea of just like, you know what, today I'm just going to choose myself. I'm just going to choose my bed. I'm going to choose a long walk and a long nap. Like those things are totally okay.
And you know, the funniest part is that when you do that, I've always seen that if I slack off for a day or 2 days or whatever, I see that I'm a lot more productive, lot more
Yeah,
creative. I get so much more done on the day I get back to work,
yeah, yeah. Because you've had that like major recharge.
Reset. Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Veganosaurus, where can people find you online if they want to check out your show, participate in your cooking classes? Those classes, not clashes.
Well, I everywhere I'm Veganosaurus. So you just go to my website www.veganosaurus.com, and you can find my podcast there. You can find a link to my Insta from there. I'm very active on Instagram. I'm Veganosaurus also on Insta. I'm not active on any other social media. So that's how you can catch up with me. And yeah, I'd love to have you all at my classes too.
Yes, I'm thinking about taking one of your classes. Hang on 2 seconds.
That'll be awesome.
I'll edit that out. I have an alarm on my phone that tells me when I have to take this COVID-19 survey if I'm going to go into the office on any given day. I have
Oh,
to. I
okay.
forgot that I have that alarm. Okay, everybody, we have been talking to Susmitha Veganosaurus, all the way over there in India, the owner and operator of Carrots Restaurant and host of the Feel Good Factor. Thank you so, so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Chris. Bye.
Bye.